everybody, thank you very much indeed for tuning into today's episode of the GLAD Report. Today, we review the eligibility case of the former president Edgar Lungu and what is and what will be of him. Without further ado, I am glad with the report.
For the power of truth, this is the GLAD Report.
Allow me to begin first by stating I will be as objective as possible, as I am a non-partisan. Just to provide a bit of context for this discussion, I do have to cite a few cases that have preceded the 2024 case of Marcello Chizombe. We've had 4 similar court cases prior to this one. Prior to the 2021 elections, the first case was the case of Danny Pule versus the Attorney General, Danny Pule and 3 others. Secondly, we had the case of Kapelasa versus the Attorney General again. Thirdly and fourthly, as these cases were combined into one, was the cases of Dr. Sashoa, the UNZA lecturer, Chapter 1 Foundation, as headed by Lydia Kasonde, the lawyer at the time, LA's president, Law Association of Zambia, and also Legal Resources Foundation as well. As I said, the third and fourth cases were combined into one, so we will view them as 3. So these 3 cases were basically arguing that the tenure, the first period of Edgar Lungu's presidency, as dated from January 25th, 2015 to the 13th of September 2016, cannot qualify as a full term as stated under Article 106 of the 2016 Constitution, which basically argues, I believe under Clause 5, that if a president has served for under 3 years, that doesn't qualify as a full term. So they basically argued on that premise, all 3 of them, and they all won. The first 2 cases were actually unanimously voted by the 7 Constitutional Court judges, and then the third case was 6 of the 7 voted yes to him being eligible. It was only 1 judge that said no, who was the judge Monelole. Yes, so that's that. So fast forward to the year, so 2021, we had that election, and Hakainde Hichilema, our president, was voted into power. So it must be said, and I'll say this now, in finality, that there are some people who are talking about the 2021 elections as to whether the current court hearings will also put into questions the validity of our now president's presidency, which is actually not going to work, which is actually not even valid constitutionally, because we only had 7 days to potentially challenge what the electorate had voted, which nobody did at the time. So we took it as what it was. HH is president and HH stays president regardless of what was to come out of this current court hearing. Yes, so now we come to 2021, where Lungu at the time, he said, I'm hanging up my boots, I'm not staying in active politics, I'm retiring. 2023, at the Sata Memorial, President Lungu deemed it fit on the 20th of October last year. He said he wanted to return into active politics, and that decision basically meant that he was to forfeit his benefits and just basically be back into active politics. If we're to move forward, just ignoring all the presidential confusion at the time of who's to be PF president, who's not to be PF president, Edgar Lungu has been viewed as PF president, especially under the Tonsi Alliance, and he's now been the president of choice at the moment. So, just the months preceding December, as we were fast approaching the 10th of December, as that was the date when we were supposed to review the Chizombe case, which is the 5th hearing, and I will explain what Marcello Chizombe, the youth activist, was actually arguing for Lungu's eligibility just now. as we were fast approaching the 10th of December, we had the 23rd of September, where we had our president, Hakim de Hichtemmer, basically suspend 3 constitutional court judges, stating that the Judicial Complaints Commission received complaints that these 3 were guilty of judicial misconduct. Fair enough. So 3 of the Constitutional Court judges were suspended, namely Judge Mulenge, Setali, and Molonde. Yes. So Edgar Lungu, on the 1st of October, which was about a week later, said that he believes the president has a vested interest in the upcoming Constitutional Court hearings. And in that, he filed an affidavit, adding it to the Chizombe case, saying that what he was accusing another judge, the same Munalula, who voted not in his favor last time at the similar court hearings, and he said Judge Munalula was equally guilty of judicial misconduct, the same thing those other 3 judges were suspended for, and he questioned, why is this judge still part of the roster? Why is he still part of the people who are going to judge my case? Secondly, in addition to that, what was written in that affidavit was that the other judge, who's the Deputy Constitutional Court President, Judge Shalini, he did not want him to be part of the roster as well. Why? Because he says he is the relative of the president, and he believes he will be nepotically biased and not be on his side. He will not be objective as he rules on the 10th of December. Either way, I believe none of his appeals were listened to. So what was Chizombe basically arguing? Michel Chizombe, the youth activist, was basically arguing that he wants to know what is the effect of the repealed Article 35 of the 1991 Constitution of Zambia on the first term of Lungu's presidency. What is the effect of that article on Lungu's first term in office? As I said, it was September 2015 to January 2015 to September 2016. What is the effect of the repealed article? Also, he also cited Article 106, the famous, or should I say infamous, Article 106, as it's always brought into question. Yes, so that was basically the Chizombe case, and I'll put what the Article 106 argues on screen, just so you can see and have like a glimpse of what was actually being argued, as well as what was taken up by the Constitutional Court. So typically, this debate has taken 2 forms. People have questioned, 1, is it how many times a president has been sworn into office that renders that person president, or is it how long the president has served in office that makes that person qualify as a full term? Or is it the time, like how long you've been in office, or how many times you've been elected into office? So that's been like the two ends of the debate, of the social media discourse. Once again, if I'm just to add to the debate and just add more like heat to this conversation, on the 28th of October, once again, this would have been the 1-year anniversary of Edgar Lungu's return into active politics. He was invited for the Sata Memorial, which he chose not to attend. And interestingly so, President Hakim de Hichtemmer chose to attend it. And obviously there's no problem with attending a former president's memorial. What was interesting is that I always find that whenever Edgar Lungu is set to go for an event, rather the other way around, if HH is set to go for an event, Edgar Lungu typically opts out. And I can cite examples of this. One example being the other time when they were supposed to have the National Prayer Day a few years ago. Edgar Lungu chose to, this is 2022, Edgar Lungu chose to worship from Tandere, and HH didn't actually show up to the actual prayer day at the showgrounds. I witnessed this myself. Yes, so there's definitely some sort of game of cat and mouse, and I think that they refuse to like just extend olive branches towards one another. But I understand there could be a bit of like animosity, and perhaps want for retribution, considering how badly he treated him, jailing him 15 times. This is Lungu jailing HH 15 times during his tenure. Anyway, that aside. So the case, 10th December, the Constitutional Court judges, and if I'm to use verbatim, they say because Edgar Childwell Lungu has been elected twice and served in office twice, he is basically ineligible to basically contest ever again. Yeah, he was obviously discontent with that ruling. He was definitely unhappy. The media minister made it a point to mention that he does not want the state or the president involved in any social media assertions that really are purely based on speculation that claim that the state was involved in that decision making. Interestingly, so we also have PF MPs saying that they want Edgar Lungu to step back and basically take on the role of statesman. I understand it's been a very difficult year for the Lungu family, as a lot of them have been put under pressure. They have been pushed by the law, saying that a lot of them were in possession of property allegedly assumed to be proceeds of crime. So it's been a very difficult year for the Lungu family, and I understand that, like, just from looking at the President Lungu, it does look like he would be tottering. He's definitely tottering psychologically, at least, I would assume. Because the question is, what do you do? Do you take on the position of statesman, or do you continue in this fight to return into office? Is the huge question. But the more he continues to totter, the more people will eventually, particularly his opponents, and even perhaps his supporters, will start to titter. So the tottering will be coupled with tittering eventually. I'm really just for the path, I don't know which path is the path of least resistance. I'm assuming it's the path of statesmanship. It sounds like the most peaceful route. And as we saw on the 10th of December, we had the police mobilize its forces. This is because of what's happened historically, where we've had kerfuffle, confusion emerge on the court grounds. Last time we had 2 people being shot. A lawyer and a cadre. So these like polarized discourses definitely lead to some sort of violence, which I to the last degree just don't support. So I'm just hoping for the most peaceful way out of this situation. And what people starting to question is, at which point do we have finality? At which point do we reach the end and say, we've had enough of these court hearings, enough of these eligibility court hearings of Edgar Lungu, we've had enough of them. But this time around they said, the court is basically allowed to return and go back with a decision if it feels that it did not fully consider the information, and that if that information was if it was neglected or omitted and would have perhaps affected the overall judgment, they are allowed to reconsider the case, was what the Constitutional Court basically argued. I'm not a lawyer by training or by trade. I just read it and tried to decode it and break it down for everyone to be able to understand what the whole debate and discussion is about. But the court hearings are all over the internet, and we're all allowed to go check them out to see if we are in agreement of what the court decided. Thank you very much indeed for tuning in. I'm glad with the report.
For the power of truth, this is the Glad Report.